The question we're asking today is, are you ready for the pain that contracting could cause? Now, of course, I've spoke about contracting quite a lot, and it's a fantastic addition to your portfolio career if you're looking to step into this space. Of course, there are great, financial benefits, flexibility, experience, networks, all of that kind of stuff there. However, there are other things at play that could make contracting a very difficult thing if you don't have the characteristics that support this space. So I'm going to talk about some of this stuff. Now, why is this important? This is important because if you understand what the pain is from the get-go, then you can decide whether you're looking to endure it or not. At the end of the day, we decide what pain we want to endure, whether we're conscious of this or not. And I'm trying to make you conscious of this so you're aware. So no one's like, oh, but he told me to do this. You should be doing stuff for yourself anyway. Okay? Now, most people fail mainly for the fact that they don't really understand what is at play here when it comes to contracting. So again, I've done some videos similar to this already. You can check some of those things out, but I'm going to talk about some really specific things here. Now, one of the first things I want to say is that sometimes the reality is, for a lot of contractors out there, it's just a glorified 9 to 5. Sounds a bit crazy. A glorified 9 to 5, they say, but you spoke about flexibility. You spoke about this. You spoke about that. What do I mean by this? What I mean by this is, if you're working inside of IR35 and sometimes for outside of IR35 contracts, there are some situations where the hiring manager doesn't necessarily respect you or see you as a freelance contractor or consultant. So with that in mind, you are treated like everyone else. Now, in some degree, their sort of jurisdiction for doing that is based on the fact that you may opt into conduct regulations if you're working inside IR35. Now, what does this all mean? The conduct regulations, and this is a really high level summary, and it's not really a summary, it's just a basic understanding, is a way of saying that a client or hiring manager will treat you like every other employee. Okay, this is how you'd like to be treated. And typically, if you're working inside of IR35, i.e. working to a contract that taxes you similar to an employee, then you're most likely going to be working inside of regulations. If you're working outside of IR35, you're most likely going to opt out of regulations because it doesn't make sense. That's where there's true flex, so to speak, but we know that doesn't always exist, okay? There are some end clients who want to act like they're offering outside of IR35 sort of like opportunities when really they're inside ones. So you just need to be careful, okay? But also you need to suss out the culture best way you can. And you can tell this. If there are situations where someone offers you a contract and there's no interview as an example, then of course you can be like, okay, what's going on there? They must be desperate. If there are situations where you've checked out Glassdoor and people are saying funny things about them, then again, you can air some caution. You can always kind of tell sometimes, but you can't always tell. Okay, so you just have to make a decision. And then if you're in there, then you have the luxury as a contractor to just opt out if you want to. And that's the beauty of contracting, okay? Now, of course, there's sometimes this whole pattern of, waking up and getting up and sticking to the whole box life routine. You wake up, in a box or out of a box. You're moving in a box to work and you're working on a box, your laptop, and you come back home in a box, you eat on a box, you die in a box. It's the box life, okay? You may have heard this before. Sounds horrible. We want to get out of the box life. We want a sense of dynamism in our life, so to speak. So sometimes there is this mundane routine. However, routine is good for productivity, so you take it as you will. Now, again, depending on your sort of like relationships with your hiring manager and the people you're working to will determine, again, sort of like how rigid they are with you. Sometimes they're probably like, no, you need to do X, Y, Z, da, 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 da. But most of the times, I know from my experience at least anyway, I've either come in as the expert or they gradually know that I provide value through my expertise, knowledge, and experience. So you have to sort of like deal with these things because sometimes it can feel like a glorified 9 to 5. So think about that. Is this something you can still deal with? Is £500 a day enough to make me wake up and be like, whatever? Okay, think about it. The second thing is it can be a lonely road. It can be a lonely road at times because there are not many people who are contractors. Now, I did do a bit of research, and I don't want to say this is valid research because I don't think the numbers are true, but roughly around, let's say 25%, a quarter of people are within this whole contracting, freelancing space, so to speak. 25% of people, this is within the UK at least anyway, as of 2022, I believe. And so I don't know if that's true or not, but the point being made is not everyone recognizes that sort of profession. Contracting as a profession, as a career path, as a portfolio career, I call it the conservative contractor, is not something that is commercially known. It's not commercially understood. People know that they exist. Most people know of the word consultant, okay? But contractor as a thing, not necessarily. And so you don't necessarily have people you can relate to. Now, I'm lucky that I've been able to forge relationships and friendships where they've either started that journey with me or I've met them along the way or they've introduced me into this space. But sometimes even if you know those people, they don't always do the same sort of profession as you. They're not in the same niche. And so with that in mind, it's a difficult one. Now, as a contractor, you are expected to essentially get things up and running, or at least understand the situation relatively quickly. You don't have months like permanent employees. You have a couple of days, if not weeks, let's say at most 2 weeks really, to understand what your function is before you start providing some value. So the first week, you're probably just meeting with different people, understanding the lay of the land, reading a lot of documentation. The second week, you're following up on that stuff and feeding back this information. Third week, you may have to deliver on some stuff. I've just started a program manager role / project manager role. And essentially, it's a great organization, really like it. And they just really need help with functioning and forming and structuring their what I call emergent business transformation. Okay, that's what it is in a programmatic change management sort of standpoint. So all they need is some rigor and structure. I'm here to try and do that. Now, there's a lot of information that I need to know and all this kind of stuff there, but my experience and stuff requires me to be on the ball. And so I need to be hella focused, tunnel vision. There's no time for playing about and all of this kind of stuff there. I need to deliver. Okay, now they don't necessarily create this pressure, but that pressure is an unspoken pressure that is created, so to speak. So you need to think to yourself, are you happy to be that person to deliver value? Or are you going to be that person who's kind of like, oh, I'm not sure. Nah, man, we ain't got time for those games. And if you're not sure, you need to get something to help you be sure, whether that's another person, whether that is reading some stuff, whatever it may be. There are times where I will read old material, check out old stuff that I've learned in order for me to get up to speed. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. No one's going to remember everything. The point I'm making is it could be a lonely road. There are times where you're chopping and changing at times. You stay in one organization for 3 months or one team for 3 months, then you change to another one. There's no consistency in that sense. So again, if you're happy to be a nomad in that sense, perfectly fine. But if that's something that you're not sure about, I think this is something to think about. Okay, so really bear that in mind. Okay, so those are the main things. The third thing I want to say is really about the fact that the market goes up and down. Now, I'll be very honest with you. I had this conversation with somebody I first did a contract with back in the day. The market is really up and down right now. It's very choppy. It feels more threatening and opportunistic. There are still opportunities, don't get me wrong, but they're not paying the same rates as I would say they did beforehand. Now, my rate hasn't necessarily changed because I'm doing a lot of sort of public sector government work through a certain strand, okay? So I'm lucky in that respect, okay? So it's been quite consistent, so to speak. However, I know there is a mass amount of people who are not necessarily getting the same experience, okay? So when it's rough, it's mad rough at times. It can be. I was out of work for 4 to 5 months by choice, okay? I decided to hand in my notice, okay? And I put in a 4-week clause as opposed to a day's notice or a week's notice or whatever it may be. And that was an opportunity for me to dive deep into my stuff. But there were times I was like, am I going to get another contract? Was this fluky? Was this something, that was just whatever? Like, I wasn't sure because I've never been in that situation before, but I had to be hopeful, so to speak. So there are times where if you are not in a situation where you're getting contracts, you are second guessing yourself. I know there is someone who I'm informally mentoring, so to speak. They're going through that process right now. They're getting contracts, but it's not at the rate that they want. So again, you have to really do the work. You need to speak to agents, speak to your accountant to understand how you can pattern your money. Make sure that you've saved an emergency fund if you can, or you have the right insurances in place. Ensure that you told your family, friends, partner what the deal is. Try to be productive in the best way possible. These are all things that have to happen. So think about all of this stuff. The other thing I want to say is that, obviously when you're delivering work, okay, whether you're project manager, program manager, business analyst, whatever it may be, imposter syndrome may linger about. It just may do, okay? And, sometimes you may feel like you're on this eternal honeymoon period where it's like, oh, I've been so lucky to get all these contracts. Yeah, luck is involved, don't get me wrong, but you have to be at the right place at the right time with the right intentions, whatever it may be. This is why having your specialist role and your generalist role is really important. If you haven't checked out that stuff, check out my website, michaeltabirade.com, for more information on that. You can also check out my course called The Independent Consultant Guide to Becoming a Contractor within the UK. We can check out my previous video as well on that information. But sometimes you may be given a task and you go blank. You're like, what do I do here? You're kind of like, what am I supposed to do? This is why frameworks are really important. This is why methodology is really important. If you're coming into the space, if you're already in the space, understand your frameworks and methodologies. It is crucial. It is key, because you'll realize the big dogs, whether that's the directors or whatever it may be, will be singing from the same hymn sheet if they are in that position. Or if they're not in that position, you'll be seen as wildly valuable. I was in a session today, a board session today, okay? And essentially there's a new director of change that came in. They were speaking my language. Everything was essentially what change management should be. Like from head to toe, they were talking about potty, blueprints, vision, all of this kind of stuff, business change managers, benefits realization, all of that kind of stuff that I love hearing. And that creates rigor and structure. And everyone was like, wow, this is exactly what we want to hear. This person has just come in, And the reason why they're seen as valuable is because they understand those frameworks. So when it comes to setting tasks or really understanding what you need to do, confirm the what, the why, the how, the when, and the who, but also have some sort of framework you can align it to, whether that is program management, project management, whether that's a waterfall style or an agile style, whether that is change management, whether that is some form of facilitation. It could be any of that stuff. It could be business analysis. It could be stuff around data management. Whatever it may be, you just need to understand what the go-to sort of like de facto model is, so to speak. Apart from just frameworks, try to understand if there is a strategy or information alluding to that strategy. That's why frameworks and structure is important, so you can pick up pieces and just plonk them in places, okay? Policies, papers, speaking to different people, they are your best friend in this situation, okay? And the last thing I want to talk about really is centered around money. Sometimes you realize that money's not enough. Damn. You could be earning £400 a day, £500 a day, £600 a day, £700 a day, £800 a day. And you're getting nice money. Let's not lie. This is anywhere between plus £1,000 to £3,000 every single week, depending on how much you're making a day. Okay, and obviously if you're inside or outside of IR35. But because you've picked up, I believe it's called, I don't think it's Parkinson's law, but let's say it's lifestyle creep. Lifestyle creep kicks in, and you're trying to do all these different projects. I know that's happened for me, paying off a loan and sorting out stuff between me and my partner and getting a house and doing all this kind of stuff. Ticking all these boxes requires money, and money gets drained quickly, and you're like, damn. So don't try to be so like ambitious, so to speak. Be smart about it. Have a system for, again, saving for your fund, but also realizing and achieving certain things that you want to achieve. In future videos, I'll talk more about how I felt after the last 2 years in terms of ticking 3 big milestones. I've had no break, I'm telling you, and I'm still doing this stuff. So it's been a difficult sort of like season, but we're still going. So hopefully that's given you some ideas really to just hit home on this fact. Sometimes at times contracting can be a glorified 9 to 5. It is what it is, but it depends on your relationship and the type of contract you're doing. It can be a lonely road, but again, it doesn't have to be lonely if you have the right level of growth mindset or you're speaking to people a certain way, whether that's formally or informally. The market can go up and down, but this is why you need a specialist sort of like idea of your role and a generalist idea of your role as well. Imposter syndrome can linger, but this is where you need to have frameworks, methodology, structures. Think about what, when, why, who, and how. 4 bums of the bench being the sort of like H, and the bums being the W's as well. And the last thing is that you realize at times the money is not always enough, but you need to be sensible, friends. You need to make sure that you have an emergency fund. You need to make sure that you save at least the minimum of your day rate every single week, at least as an example. You need to pay off your debts if you can. Don't be overly ambitious. Don't let Parkinson's law / lifestyle creep kick in. Think about what you need for yourself. Again, people have been asking me about coaching and mentoring around this stuff. Again, this season is very busy for me, so I may be available from October onwards. I'm not sure yet, but there is my course. Check out my course, The Independent Consultant UK Guide to Becoming a Contractor within the UK. Check it out. The link is below for you to just really absorb for yourself, go through all of that kind of stuff there. And the more people obviously that get this stuff and they connect with each other on this platform, the better it will be. So again, you can check out that course. If you want to see more information around positive psychology, portfolio careers and life management, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And as always, my friends, understand, reach and expand. Peace.